So today's talk is on the topic of how emotions get in the way of our happiness. And I believe that many of you have found that to be a case, and that's why you have joined this particular session this morning. So I'd like to just invite you for just a few moments to drop into your breath to find out what is the weather up in the mind, up here, and how do you feel here? This is to get yourself tuned in to knowing what you're thinking and how you're feeling. And this is something you can do anytime on any day, because it's important for us to know how we feel. It's important for us to also be aware of the thoughts that are circling in our mind. So if I could invite you just for a few moments to sit back and just close your eyes very gently, dropping into your breath, knowing where your breath is, and sensing how you're feeling right in this moment. Are you feeling relaxed? Or are you feeling uneasy? Perhaps even a sense of being worried? Or you're feeling happy? Or even annoyed or angry? And now tune into your mind. What are the thoughts up there? What is the weather like in the mind? Is it a clear scenario up in the mind? Or are there a lot of thoughts? And what kind of thoughts are there? Are these thoughts familiar to you? And how do these thoughts correspond to how you feel? Are you feeling happy and the thoughts are troubling? Or are you feeling troubled but the thoughts are happy? Happy thoughts. Or are you feeling happy and your mind is pretty clear? Or are you feeling uneasy and the thoughts are troubling in nature? And now just take 3 deep breaths. And really feel your body doing the breathing. And at the end of the 3rd breath, open your eyes. Okay. So if you can share with me in the chat box underneath, what did you notice in terms of how you were feeling and the thoughts that were in your mind? You had a few mindful moments, which means moments that you were more aware than usual. You were checking in to how you were feeling in the body and what was going on in your mind. So share that. You can share anonymously, or you can just type it, because it's a chance for us to all learn from each other. Okay, I see some comments now coming in. Happy and relaxed, grateful feeling. Forgot to breathe slowly. Okay. So with your breathing, if you're doing a mindfulness practice, it's just to let your body do the breathing, because your body knows how to breathe. It's been breathing all the time ever since you were born and took the first breath. So trust the body to breathe. And someone shared feeling better even after that short practice. Good. So it shows how important for us to have that awareness, even if it's just a few moments. Because when you are aware of your breath, the thoughts tend to stop. All the thoughts that may have been troubling you would tend to stop. Because these thoughts are what is fueling a certain emotion or a mood that you feel. Okay, and someone said here, I heard a bird chirping just outside my window, bringing me to my daily encounter morning with the birds. Wonderful. So that is being present. So if you're listening to me now and you're really focused on what I'm saying, are you unhappy? Probably not, because you are focused being in the present moment. There is no unhappiness in the present moment. It's only when our mind starts to go back into history, trying to rewrite the chapters in our history book, which is absolutely impossible. That's when we may start to feel a certain emotion. Or our mind goes off into an imagination mode, into the future, thinking about what could possibly happen, and usually not so pleasant, because our mind has the tendency to want to be prepared for what could be worse. And this is all about our survival. Or you could be thinking about what you want and you're not getting, which is also something in the future. Wanting something in the future which you're not sure if you're going to get. Or wishing you had something which you didn't get. And that's going to the past. So today, I'm going to focus more on what are these emotions that really get in the way of our happiness. All right. So I'm going to put some slides up to illustrate what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I think you're very familiar with some of these emotions that I illustrated on this slide: angry, happy, anxious, bored. And I'm sure there are many other emotions which are currently not reflected on this slide. So this probably being the first of a series of talks on emotions, we'll focus on anger and fear. And another emotion that drives us humans is love. Many of you have done things because of love. Many of you have done things for love. And many of you have also been very hurt by love. Would that be correct? So let's make this a bit interactive for you to share your thoughts as well, so that I know that you're really out there. Now, just for your information, there are over 400 of you signed on this webinar. So it's really wonderful that you're spending this Saturday morning, cloudy outside, but it doesn't have to be cloudy in the mind. Now, I'd like you to reflect back, whether it's your child who has dropped an ice cream, which I think all of us have at some point or another, even as an adult, or when you dropped an ice cream. How did you feel? Why does a child cry when he or she drops an ice cream? Have you thought about it? Have you ever wondered? Usually it's because of fear. Fear of being scolded, exactly. And if a child drops an ice cream and then you say, it's okay, that was just an accident. Next time, hold your ice cream in this manner instead of that manner, which caused it to drop. Then you're using that moment as the teaching moment. And the child learns. And the child learns with confidence, not learn with great fear that the next time she picks up an ice cream cone, she's holding it so tightly to ensure that it doesn't drop again so she doesn't get scolded. Is this what happened to you? So what a child learns as well, that if I cry, which could also be a spontaneous response by the body, because crying is a way of releasing a lot of that fear. And that also usually helps, because a parent tends not to scold the child so hard when the child cries. And the child learns that by crying, he can avoid being scolded, which is not exactly a great way for a child to learn how to cope with something going wrong. So if you like to raise a child to have more confidence, it's not to scold, but to use every opportunity as a teaching moment. Or someone gets chased by the dog. When someone gets chased by a dog and develops that fear gets stuck in their head. And whenever this person sees a dog again, the fear simply arises. And this becomes a memory that can be easily triggered at any time. But it means that the person will always have this sensation of fear in the body by just the sight of a dog or by the thought that there could be a dog somewhere. So this is not helpful, is it? Because this is what happens to us as adults. When we think of something that could result in something negative happening, fear arises. Now, you may or may not know that that fear is felt in the body, especially in the area of the chest. Except that when it comes to fear, whether you dropped an ice cream or you've been chased by a dog or something imaginary, having to eat something that you really dislike, and you can see how we have this reaction that we see a plate of food in front of us that we don't like. And we actually have this fear of eating it because we remember it tasted so bad. Now, how do we deal with fear? There's another emotion that's called anger. So we camouflage the fear with anger because we have also learned over time that the best defense is offense. And so we learn the blame game. Like the kid who dropped the ice cream. If she learns by watching other kids, or even an adult, that you blame it on the cone that was too small for the scoop, she will learn that it will help. Or she learns that she blames it on another kid, maybe the sibling might have nudged her, and that's why she dropped the ice cream. And the child who's fearful of a dog now blames the dog instead of finding a way to deal with that fear, to overcome the fear. Now is to blame the object that is causing the fear. So what's important here is to first realize how these emotions come about. It is about preserving ourselves, survival. And as we grow up, we go into an office, something goes wrong, we also find someone else to blame. If it's not someone else, perhaps the customer, the boss, the system, the situation, the government, whatever. Instead of looking at the situation and saying, what is it that I can learn from this experience? How do I overcome this fear? Because anger is so often layered on top of fear. And I'll give you an example. And I'm going to stop sharing screen now so that you can see probably my face in full rather than in a tiny little box. Say you're going to the airport to catch a flight. Now, I know that seems like a dream now because we hardly get a chance now to take a trip. But in the days that you did, you were going out to the airport and you had a lot of time on your hands. And the car approaching the airport suddenly found it to be in a traffic jam. How do you feel? You had a whole 2 hours to spare. And you know this traffic jam is not going to last very long. It's not going to really hold back or cause you to miss your flight. I'm sure you're pretty cool about it. It's like, okay, it's just a little bit of a clogged road here. But what if you were cutting it very close in getting to your flight? Like you only have 5 minutes to spare, and this traffic jam looks like it's going to be a 15-minute jam. You're going to get really angry. So in the same situation, the first is you're cool about it because you have a lot of time. The second is there is fear. And because of the fear, you become angry. So do you see how anger and fear are like two sides of the coin? And they work hand in hand. So I hope from this example, you can start to look at the times when you get angry. What is the underlying fear? Because these two emotions don't add happiness to your life, do they? Most of the time, they don't. Most of the time, they take away happiness from you. So let's explore a little bit more about anger. Now, I would say there are two types of anger. Not all anger is negative. There is also a positive anger, in addition to the negative anger that we usually associate anger with. The negative anger is an emotion that usually propels us to be destructive. That we can even cause a big damage on the relationship because the words that come out of our mouth are cutting, slicing, piercing, very damaging. And that's how we damage relationships, including marriages, because the words are just simply very hurtful. But there is a positive anger, which is constructive in nature. And this is when you sense something is not right. Something is unjust, not fair. And this is sort of an instinctive anger for you to address the unfairness, the unjust, which is very different from being vindictive. Vindictiveness is destructive, that you destroy yourself as well as the other person that's involved in your anger. Constructive anger or positive anger is an anger that you notice that you need to correct things, that you need to put things on a better keel. That is an alert system. But it's not to act on that anger at the time you feel it. Because when we're angry, there's less clarity in our mind. So this is when we have to take 3 deep breaths, acknowledging that there is anger because you feel that something's unjust, and to allow ourselves to calm down before we decide what is the best way to act. Because if we don't act, and this is a recurring theme, then we're just going to keep getting angry. And at some point, it can become destructive because we explode. So what's important is for us to acknowledge that we have this sense of something is not just. Then think of what are the options. Focus on the options. Figure out a strategy, how to speak to the person that's going to be able to make a difference. And when you speak calmly and lay down the facts and the possible solutions, be very objective in the discussion, putting all your emotions, which means your judgments, aside. Then you could probably come up with something that is useful and beneficial to you and to all the people concerned. Because when we use our destructive energy, then people also fear us. And we can end up affecting our own reputation, as well as destroying people along the way, whether it's their livelihoods, their sense of their safety with you, or whatever that may be. And this is where mindfulness plays such an important role. For us to be fully aware of what we're feeling as we're feeling it, what we're thinking as we're thinking it. So we have that awareness to be able to pause in that moment and not act rashly. So I see some questions coming in, and I don't mind taking a few questions now, as it's probably in keeping with what I'm just sharing at the moment. How do you speak to someone who's always stonewalling you? May I ask who this person is who is stonewalling you? If it's your child, then perhaps is the way the child is trying not to be interrogated. Because often children feel they're being interrogated, especially when they are transitioning from being a young child to becoming a teenager and growing up into being an adult. They would like to be treated with respect. And that is something parents may not have the awareness to transition their style or mode of speaking. So I have two teenagers who have now grown into their 20s, and I had to be very mindful of the tone of voice I use when I speak to them. And even the choice of words, because they're much more sensitive to their parents than if their friends said the same thing or their auntie said the same thing, because we are privileged to be their parents. So when I look at it that way, I just reflect on it and say, how do I now improve or change or shift or adjust the way that I speak and the choice of words so that I don't trigger them? And instead, they would actually have a conversation with me. So when I take it as a learning opportunity, I don't get upset and say, why are you stonewalling me? Instead, it's like, okay, how do I now adjust the way I speak to a 15-year-old, to an 18-year-old, to a 22-year-old, to a 24-year-old, and grow as a parent? What if it's your husband? Okay, so if it's your husband, this is a good time for me to now talk about love. Now, love, we usually think it's going to bring us happiness. And I'm sure many of you have realized that it can also bring you a lot of pain. Because falling in love is very different from loving someone. If you recall, when we fall in love, it was a time when we were feeling really good whenever we were with the person. We fall in love because it is about how we feel when the person is around. We think we're falling in love with a person, but we're actually falling in love with the feelings, the euphoria of how that person makes us feel. And that's why sometimes people fall out of love, because the effect is no longer there after some months or years. So that's why we talk about chemistry, which is the ability to sense each other, whether we are able to fulfill each other's needs and help each other feel good being around each other. Often after marriage, this sensing somehow reduces, either deliberately because there's a assumption that, okay, you're married now, you're not gonna split it now, you're stuck together. And there's a lot less effort put in. And a lot less effort means less awareness, less sensing going on. When is the last time you asked your spouse, are you happy? A lot of people don't ask because they're afraid of the answer, that the answer is no. So people pretend that they're happy enough. Imagine how many more years you're going to have with each other. Is this how you like to continue the relationship? You have an opportunity here to make the relationship better. So how about picking up the courage instead of fearing, So here you go, that fear again. And when we have this fear, we don't want to act. And sometimes worse, we change that fear into anger. Why should I ask? Why doesn't he ask me? Why am I the one who's always taking the initiative? Here's the anger. It's all happening in here. And then we end up becoming an angry woman because of the underlying fear. So what if now? Pick up that courage, put aside the fear. What do you have to lose? Nothing. All that is imagined. And ask your husband or ask your child, are you happy? Are you happy, son? Are you happy, daughter? And if they say no, ask the next question. What can I do to make this marriage better? As I said earlier on, there are two kinds of love. One kind is, it's about the me. What can I get out of this relationship? And that's why I love. Another kind of love is, it's about us. How can we build this partnership that we both will journey together, supporting each other and caring for each other? So it's so important to now change the word from love to care. That in loving someone is about caring for someone. And when we really care, we put aside all our judgments, because our judgments get in the way of us caring for someone. So ask that question, are you happy? What can I do to make this a happier partnership? So I have another question here. Okay, lots of questions are actually coming in. That's fantastic. How do you react constructively when dealing with a husband having repeatedly ambiguous relationships and deny all the way that things have happened? Well, you have a choice. Because for a marriage to be sustainable in a happy way, there needs to be communication. And there needs to be values that are aligned. And there needs to be mutual respect and a sense of worthiness. That that person is worthy of your respect and your care. And vice versa. So when one side, something falls through, then it is difficult. And it's good to have a very open relationship in terms of talking about it. Open up the communications. And if you can't, that itself is something that you need to address. And you may fear the answers that may come about. But you need to ask yourself, is this a relationship you want to continue with for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Now, I'd like to say that if we can love someone by truly caring, and if that person says, I no longer want this marriage, or I no longer love you anymore, and if you really care, you can set the other person free. And you can set yourself free without all the vindictiveness and resentment, because you truly care. So if you really love someone, care. Because when you stop caring, I'm not sure you can even call that love anymore. My daughter is having problems with her boyfriend, saying that he always uses verbal abuse on her. I would like to talk to this man, and how could I put it to him? I wouldn't talk to that man. I would talk to my daughter. And I would say to her, is this someone you would like to end up with? That He could be abusing you for the rest of your life. Or are you more worthy of someone who treats you with more respect? So I won't try to correct him. I would want to make my daughter wiser. Not to discourage her from this relationship, but to allow her to learn, to assess what is good for her, and to make the appropriate decision. A lot of times, people don't want to break up the relationship out of fear. And because of that fear, they get even more angry. And then there are more fights. So her boyfriend may not want the relationship, but he may be afraid to say that to her. And so he takes an aggressive approach, hoping that maybe she will quit. So look at abusiveness. What is underlying? Because the abuse is the anger being expressed. Another question here, how to correct or make changes to the person who hears something that we talk and blows his top. Example, when we say, whose boxes are those? The person feels guilty and defensive and blow his top. Reacted as he heard, why are you leaving these boxes here? So sometimes we may not be aware of the tone of voice that we use that may cause the trigger. So this is not about taking the blame. This is about increasing our awareness on how we can adjust the way we speak, because it happens to be someone who is extremely sensitive. So let me just give you a few examples. Whose boxes are these? They're really interesting boxes. Or, whose boxes are these? Same words, different tone. Would it give you a different sense of what is underlying the question? So the second one comes with a bit of accusation. Whose boxes are these? As opposed to, oh, whose boxes are these? And even add another line down there. These are very interesting boxes. Or there are very interesting stuff in there. So try to change the tone. And if you know they're his anyway, just put them one side. Let him decide when he wants to go through the boxes. Another question is, how do you talk to someone who's always angry, jump to conclusion before you finish, and turn around pointing at you saying he's dodging what he's doing and all your fault? I would just stop speaking to this person for a while and let him have the space. He probably has a lot of negative judgment about you, if that's what's happening. No different from when you are judgmental about someone, before the person speaks, you're already all worked up. Like someone that has upset or angered you. You don't even have to see that person. You just need to think of that person. And your anger can come up again. Because your mind doesn't know that it's not even a real person in front of you. Because this person reminds you of a previous incident that was very unpleasant. So the defensiveness already comes up because that's how the brain works. The brain is just trying to protect you, defend you. So when he has those kind of judgments, it's very hard to penetrate and have a good conversation. So maybe just not speak for a little while. Speak when absolutely necessary, and speak in the most gentle voice. Hi, dear, would you like your dinner now? I'm going to prepare dinner now. But if you'd like to eat later, that's okay too. So it's the gentleness, the kindness that's going to help shift someone's mind that may have very negative judgments or opinions about you. Use this as an opportunity to practice. Practice being kind. Because the more you practice, it becomes part of your nature. And being kind is a great feeling. Try it. Okay, there are lots of questions here. I'm going to move over to the Q&A side and see if I can address some of those. Body's uneasy, but mind is clear. Why is this possible? How do I calm both down? Okay, so when you first start a mindfulness practice, you may notice some uneasiness, which is a remnant of what has happened in the morning or what you've been thinking about. And then now that you're dropping into your breath and you're clearing your mind out, the body hasn't got the message yet that, you're feeling cool, you're feeling easy, you're feeling relaxed. And then the body can relax too. Because if you were speaking with someone that you got a little bit agitated with, or you were thinking about something that got you annoyed, your body would have tensed up. How do I best apply mindfulness to anxiety, either generally or socially? Can't seem to rationalize away the anxiety. It is not easy to rationalize away the anxiety, which is why in the mindfulness-based stress reduction course, it's 8 weeks. Because for you to reach this point of feeling anxious, so easily triggered, means that there has been repeated incidents of this that has been building up. The defensiveness that is causing your brain to send messages to your adrenal glands to pump adrenaline, to pump cortisol. And these two hormones, especially adrenaline, is going to cause your body to tense up. And the body tensing up usually happens in the chest area, the arms, the legs, because it's getting you ready to run. It's like that kid running away from the dog in that earlier slide that I showed. And so when the kid sees a dog, immediately he already gets anxious. So if this has been repeated, it's not going to be just a switch in your mind to say that I don't need to be feeling anxious. I don't need to fear. It takes a while for the mind to be reprogrammed. That's what it is. Okay? Why not fear leads to worry? Or is it why does fear lead to worry? Well, because humans have a mind that overthinks. If you look in the safari, where the wild are, once if the zebras are grazing and a leopard, a prey comes along, they will start to run. One of them will probably get caught. And once that happens, the rest of them just slows down and continues to graze because they know that the danger is over. The zebra doesn't stand there and start thinking, oh my gosh, it could have been me. Oh my gosh, when is going to be my turn? When am I going to be eaten by the leopard? Next time, it could be me. It could be tomorrow. And start worrying. That's why there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Humans keep thinking. And when our mind gets so used to overthinking, it becomes a habit. So in the courses that we conduct, the minimum is 4 sessions for you to start becoming aware of the habits that you have in your mind. Then you can start to replace the habits or start to shift the habits. And it takes time. Whatever you've been doing on autopilot mode, that means without even have to think, it's already a habit. So let's say when you go and brush your teeth tonight, notice which side of the mouth you start brushing first. That is already in autopilot mode. And now, start brushing on the other side. Instead of the usual side, which is habitual, and see how long it takes for you to switch to the other side to start brushing first and make that a new habit. So it takes time. It's like learning a new skill. You can't learn how to swim in 1 lesson. It will take you at least 8 lessons. 4 lessons to at least get the stroke and you can swim a little bit. But chances are, unless you practice rigorously, you won't be able to get to the other side. So same with mindfulness. It takes time, it takes practice, and takes reinforcement. And it's always helpful to have a teacher instead of trying to learn it on YouTube or just an app. Okay, another question is, how do we manage emotions that are causing us to implode inside of ourselves due to complication of stress and negative thoughts? So in mindfulness, we teach techniques to dissolve the anger, dissolve the fear, instead of suppressing. It is the suppression that it implodes. So one of the foundational attitudes of mindfulness-based stress reduction, or mindfulness in general, is letting go. Practicing letting go. Because if we can't let go of our thoughts, it is our thoughts that are troubling us, even torturing us. Whatever has happened last week, yesterday, last year, 2 years ago, it's over. But this mind, if it's not trained, it is not tuned, it can keep torturing you for years, blaming you for what you have done, or blaming someone else, and hold the vengeance in your heart, keeping like a rock in your heart. So when we suppress this, it tends to implode when we're triggered. So in letting go is to be able to put the judgments aside. So whoever has upset you is to be able to put the judgments aside instead of calling him names. Like he's an idiot, he's stupid, he's this and that. These kind of judgments will just fuel this anger that is going to be latent in us. Instead, it's just to say, well, that's just the way he is. It's like you don't criticize a dog for barking because that's the nature of a dog. So what is the nature of that person? What are his dominant habits? Except that's him. Unless he wants to change, you can't change him, just as no one can change you. I can give you this talk, point it out to you, what is possible. But it's you who has to take that journey of change. No one can change you. And that means you can't change anyone else. What if we are practicing mindfulness during difficult conversations at work, whereas the other party remains angry, accusational, continues to harm our reputation, and mark us down at work? We've also tried to ending the conversation at a time when they're calmer, but he has a short fuse. So my question to you is, what are your options? In the practice of mindfulness, it's not about trying to get everyone else to practice mindfulness because it's impossible. It's like just because we like to eat a certain type of food, we want to make sure everybody else knows about the food and eats it too. So now is for us to be aware, what are the sensations going on in the body? What is the narrative going on in the mind? And focus on what are our options of response. He is going to be who he is. He's going to have a short fuse. That's not going to change. What is your response? Your response could be not say anything, or be agreeable, or find another job when things change and the economy looks better. In the meantime, suck it up. So suck it up in not sense of suppressing it. It's like, you know what? It's okay lah. I have a job. I just do my work. If he doesn't like me, it's okay. What's the big deal? It's only a big deal when you make it a big deal. So just let things be. You're paid to do a job. You're not paid to be liked. It's a bonus to be liked. And to be liked, just to be kind. It's hard to dislike someone who's kind. So practice being kind, even to someone who may not be so kind to you. How to be mindful to the emotions that may affect our communications pattern. First of all, to be aware. And secondly, take the little adjustments. Don't be too ambitious. One step at a time. Life is a journey that's always in progress. What's the difference between emotions and feeling? So feeling is something that you sometimes could feel even in your body, like I'm feeling tired. Okay, what's the emotion? The emotion could be sad. Okay, so I hope that explains it. Oh, I'm feeling energetic. What's emotion? Happy. Because usually the two go together. Sometimes asking, are you happy? And the answers are positive, but I always have doubts about how truthful the answer is. Well, we can always overthink and make life difficult for ourselves. And that's why John Kabat-Zinn's book is called Full Catastrophe Living. Even if someone says, I'm happy, then we can start to think, no, I don't think so. I don't think he's telling me the truth, not the whole truth. I think there's some unhappiness there. Let it go. If he says he's happy, yay. Unless he's sitting at the corner and sulking and looking really down, take his word for it. Stop doubting, because it's just going to irritate the other person. And that person will stop telling you and being truthful because you don't believe it anyway. So do you see how we create difficulties in our relationship? Because we lack the trust. So this is another foundational attitude of mindfulness-based stress reduction. Trust. Trust yourself and trust others. I'm not saying blindly, but when they share something with us, trust they're being honest. And if they're not, let them come back to us to tell us otherwise. Is it true that overthinking can cause us to be unhappy? What do you think? Check it out for yourself. When you're overthinking, what is happening? Do you feel happy when you're overthinking? If you don't feel happier, then the answer is obvious. It doesn't make you happier by overthinking. So I don't sit around thinking about this and that. I focus on what is it that I can do to make myself useful to everyone, including people out there who is now listening in. There are 499 of you. How do I make myself useful? Just be kind, to have confidence. If I indulge in fear and anger, there is no way I could give you this talk. And you would be able to see that I'm a hypocrite. So it's important to be authentic. It's important to be focusing on being useful to others. And this way, whatever we do with a sense of purpose in life. So ask yourself, what can you do to value add to the lives around you? And that means not scolding them, but supporting them and using the right moment to teach. And knowing that if they're a teenager, we might not be the right people to teach. So we just be there to support them and let somebody else teach them. Sometimes it's one-sided that we give and give to our loved ones, but the person just don't care. So should we set them free? How does it feel here when you ask the question? Maybe give her freedom, if that's what this person would like. That is also a form of giving. And that is perhaps something that the person really wants. So offer it and see what happens. Put the fear aside. It's better to give the person freedom than to live the rest of your life in misery. And maybe that person doesn't want freedom. and that will wake him or her up. How to be more patient to people who keep repeating mistakes. I have a lovely teacher who keeps telling me he made one statement or question. How many times do you forgive someone? What's the number? And his answer was, one more time. Why? Because there's no point for us to hold it in our heart. It's not your mistake, it's the other person's mistake. Why does his mistake bother you so much? It's like if I have a student in class and I teach the student something and he makes a mistake, I will just patiently check with him. Is there another way of doing this? Do you know how to get the answer? And if I can't teach him right, then perhaps there's someone else more skillful. And if he keeps repeating the same mistake and I'm the teacher, then perhaps I need to reflect on myself on how do I improve my teaching skills. So don't be angry with mistakes. Ask ourselves, how can we change the way we support the person? That's more important, because criticizing the person will not help the person. Will only make him resentful and want to stay away from us. What are your thoughts on coping with illnesses in the family? Well, first of all, we have to be aware and remind ourselves, as long as we have this human body, it is subject to illness and eventually death. I remember going to a doctor. I said, don't you think that there are too many people with cancer today? And her answer was stunning. It stunned me. She said, because chronic diseases are so well treated these days with the medication to manage our high cholesterol, our blood pressure, our diabetes, and so on and so forth, that eventually cancer is going to get the person. I'm like, oh, wow. It's true, isn't it? Because we have to die one way or another, one form of way or another. If we don't drop dead because of a heart attack or an accident, then it's likely to be another way. If we can treasure life, treasure the time we have when we have it, and when the illness does strike on any one of us, we know that we've lived our life well and fully. Which is why it's so important to not let emotions get in the way of our happiness. Because then we're just wasting this time being unhappy, and the time is irrecoverable. We can't reclaim this time. If we're going to spend the next 1 hour being unhappy, you can't reclaim this time and says, you know what, I'm going to relive it. You can't. So learn how to live in the present moment. And the present moment is noticing the breath, being aware of the body. And this requires training, practice. And when in the present moment, there's only peace and happiness. Yes. Our happiness is right under our nose, not what people do to us. So instead of thinking of all these people who have done wrong to us or who have wronged us, let that go. It's all in the past. Focus on being present. What is it now that I can do that's going to add value to someone else's life? So change the paradigm, the intention of living, and the world changes for you. Okay, another one here is love and relationship most of the time transactional in nature? Unfortunately, that has become the case for a lot of couples. It's like This is what I do for you. This is what you do for me. And it has become like a business relationship. And when that business relationship falls apart, it goes to a divorce court and it becomes a big financial fight. So I would ask, why did the two people get married in the first place? Did they really care about each other? Or is it because they felt that by being married, they see benefits of being each other, especially materially, that they can afford a bigger apartment. They can now afford a car, which on his or her own won't be able to afford one, or get a leg up by marrying this person. So, what is the intention? Because if some of the intentions are in this line of thinking, then chances are it will continue into the marriage for years to come. Sad, isn't it? But it happens because different people get married with different intentions. So I hope those of you who are not married yet, marry someone with the right intention of you finding someone worthy, someone that you respect, and it's mutual, and you're going to support each other through life, supporting the growth, and that you care for that person in good health, in bad health. Not because there's material benefit. Another question here is, I'm affected by my emotions, especially people's anger and tone, to the extent of not being able to do things productively for that day. What can I do so that I won't be as affected? So notice how you're affected, where it happens in the body. If there's tightening the chest, drop your breath into it. So breathe into it. And that's how you let go of most of the time, the narrative, the stories that come up in the mind, the overthinking, like, how can he speak to me this way? Why is he saying that? Why is he using these kind of words? Does he not respect me? So be aware that a lot of times it's not just what that person is saying. It is all the judgments that come up. So in mindfulness, the definition of mindfulness by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn is paying attention on purpose in a particular way in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So if we can put judgments aside, it will change our experience. The same person you may have positive judgments of, you had a positive experience. If your judgments now shift to become negative, chances are you will now have negative experience with the same person. So our mind defines the experience with the judgments. And that is the basis of why I learn and apply mindfulness. Because by being able to put away my judgments of people, I have a more pleasant life. And I'm able to interact with people as a person, not clouded by all the judgments. This is not to say judgments don't arise, but having the awareness of the judgments help us to be able to put them aside so that we don't let it interfere with what is going on in the present moment. And whatever unpleasant has happened, to be able to leave it in the history, not keep bringing it back into the present, because there's no benefit in it unless it's for the purpose of what can I learn from it so that I can become wiser and not to repeat it. Okay, another one here is, I can't seem to be able to communicate with my 13-year-old son. He seems to be constantly rude, saying things like stupid, I don't care, and often defensive. Acting like a porcupine, I get upset. So if he's being a porcupine, he's actually sending you a very clear message, leave me alone. So if you care about him, respect his wish. Let his dad deal with him. Or Let him know. Come to me when you need something from me. But in the meantime, I will respect what you want, which is to leave you alone. He's a 13-year-old. When you are attending the Mindfulness Foundation course, you will understand how the brain develops. And this is a time when a child is wanting to develop a sense of self and independence. And especially if it's a boy and you are the mother, he wants to be independent of the mother. And this is part of nature because the boy needs to eventually be able to leave the aprons of the mother, the skirt of the mother, in order to find another female in a different skirt so that he can start his own family eventually. Now, it is very hard for us as mothers to accept that when we're not aware that this is part of nature. What if I have a son and he's constantly with me? What's the chance of him finding a girlfriend to be able to start a family of his own in the future? And which girl would want a boy who's always clinging on to the mother? And chances are the girlfriend or eventually the wife will see the mother as a threat. And this is what happens in a lot of mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationships. So if your son is looking to push you away and wanting this sense of independence, I would say, good for him. He's growing up. He's no longer a little toddler always wanting to follow mom around, hang around mom all the time. Let his dad take more participation in fathering him. Another question is, my husband left his job 2 years ago to take a break, but ended up becoming lost and unmotivated to secure his next job. I find it hard to encourage him because he seems to be avoiding my questions. How should I approach him? If you really care about him, go to him and assure him, because there may be a lot of fear in him. Now, remember, when you got married, you took the vow, for better or worse, poorer or richer. So assure him, it's okay. We have enough money. And if you still have a job, I have a job. And if we need to downsize, let's downsize. When we have a mindset that we have enough, we actually let go a lot of fear. Because when we always feel that we don't have enough, then we are not able to enjoy the fruits of our labor, because we keep thinking about how do we get more and more. And this discontentment is causing us so much fear, worry. And another word of it to describe it is actually greed. And the opposite of greed is to be able to say, I have enough. And the abundant mentality is what enables us to be more generous, to give, to share. And if this person is your spouse, definitely sharing, supporting each other is what the marriage is all about. How to reveal to a close friend that you knew about her illness and you're worried about her. For the past 1.5 years, I've been pretending not to know, and she doesn't want to reveal her illness to her friends. I knew it from her family. Respect that. Respect her wish to have that privacy. And if you happen to know, treat it as a privileged information that you received. And not to let the family down by disclosing you know. Learn how to be able to keep secrets. Because as friends, even if someone is no longer your friend and someone had as a friend divulged secrets to you, it's meant to be kept. And you keep it. So in this case, just spend time with her. She wants to be happy. She doesn't want people talking about her illness. She doesn't want people worrying about her illness. Just have fun with her. After all, many of us have an illness and may not even know about it. Some people who have a heart attack or a stroke has an illness they don't just suddenly collapse. It's because the illness is there. So at least you know, time is precious. Most of us have less tomorrows than yesterday. I'm certainly one of them. I have less tomorrows than yesterday. So I would wish to treasure each of my days. Okay, there's so many more questions. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through them. So I would promise you that I would have another session with you. And in the last 9 minutes here, I would like to just do a short mindfulness practice with all of you, just giving you a little taste of how to regain your calmness, how to be more centered, how to let go a bit of the fear. Okay, it's not going to do the trick immediately, but it gives you a taste. And secondly, I'd like to share with you that tomorrow I will be hosting a mindful parenting workshop at 4 o'clock with two of my colleagues and one of my students at NUS Bremen, who had taken mindfulness course, and it has helped to improve his relationship with his family, as well as helping with his condition of eczema. He had a very severe form of eczema that covered his whole body. So tune in and listen to his sharing. So with that, I apologize that I can't take all the questions. There are probably about another 30 questions that haven't been answered in the Q&A side, and another 15 questions that are on the chat side. So if I may invite you to just sit back. Now you've been listening a lot. So just close your eyes and take 3 beautiful deep breaths. And being aware of your breath. At the same time, just tuning into your mind while anchored on your breath. And just be aware of the thoughts that are going through in your mind. So you're not speaking to the thoughts or engaging the thoughts or following the thoughts. You're just observing the thoughts. And some of these thoughts are the learnings crystallized in your mind. Be aware of your breath. So this is the 50-50 awareness. Awareness of your breath as well as awareness of what's going on in the mind. As an observer. So you don't need to do the breathing because your body knows how to breathe. And you're not thinking either because the mind throws thoughts up. And you're just observing both the breath and the thoughts. You may even be aware of how your body is feeling at this moment. Whether your body is relaxed, or if there's any tension or tightness anywhere, just take note. Stress is usually indicated on the body. Stress is usually associated with anger or fear. So now with this awareness of your breath, awareness of the body, and awareness of thoughts, is a start for you to be more aware and therefore more mindful of what is going on in your inner world, the inner world of your mind, and how that is connected to what your body experiences. Instead of living blindly, being carried away by emotions, feeling like your life is out of control. With the awareness, you can start to explore the options and make better decisions, better choices, even in your response. Instead of being trapped and controlled by your emotions, just wanting to hit back, wanting to strike out, wanting to have your say. So anchor in the breath and start the journey of knowing that you can choose to just say nothing until the right moment arises. Or simply do nothing until your emotions have calmed down and you have a clearer mind. That these options, the possibility, and your ability is there when you have the awareness. And this awareness doesn't just get turned on by a switch. It is trained with practice. And now just focusing on 3 more breaths. And slowly opening your eyes. Okay. So I hope this session has benefited you, and I welcome your comments, especially in the chat side, so that I can get a sense on as to whether this talk has hit the right spots, the sweet spots. And if there's any particular topic or area that you'd like me to emphasize on or cover in my next talk, which I will schedule sometime in July, please let me know. So in the meantime, enjoy your Saturday. This Saturday is not going to come by again. So focus being present, being caring, supportive of the people who love you and who are loved by you. So I hope to see many of you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. If not, there's also the Mindfulness at Sunset, which is a little program that I do on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. And my colleagues do Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Today being Saturday, my colleague who's the head of counseling, Lily Gan, will be conducting in Chinese at 6 o'clock this evening. So if you have parents or friends who prefer the Chinese language, introduce them to this session. So get on our Facebook page, like the page, and get all the updates there. This afternoon, there's a talk by Dr. Lauda on how to care for the eyes. Our eyes are so important. Imagine our life without sight. Don't take it for granted. So tune in to find out how to care for your eyes. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and see you again very soon. Bye-bye.